Podcast Answer Man, episode number 390.
Entertaining, educational, and encouraging content that makes a difference.
This is GSPN.TV.
Join the community.
Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Podcast Answer Man. My name is Cliff Ravenscraft, and this, my friends, is the podcast devoted to helping you take your message, your business, and your life to the next level. That's right, my friends. It does not matter if you're brand new to this online content creating world we live in, or if you've been doing this stuff for many years. There's something we can all do to take everything in life to the next level. And my friends, this week I want to talk to you about an email. Actually, I'm not going to talk about the email too much, but I want to give you my response to an email that came in from a friend of mine who is looking to take their business and their life to the next level. This person has been seeing all of my updates on social media related to my workouts and all kinds of other things, and had communicated to me that this person is very inspired and is hoping to get back at some of those things in their own life. I'm trying not to even hint whether or not this person was male or female, but that's not important. But what is important is that this person emailed me as a result of me asking some questions and began to explain to me in a very lengthy email that says, Cliff, I have been building this business for so many years. I've been investing in so many of these aspects. Here are the reasons why I'm doing it. But the thing is there are so many things that I'm doing, and I've invested so much time, so much energy in all of these things, but yet it's not all quite panning out the way that I need it to. It's not quite paying the bills, at least these specific areas. And, I can't just leave it and try something new, because I'll have to go back to zero and start with something completely different. And I've already invested so much and have achieved a lot of great things, a lot of goals that I've had. I've achieved a lot of great things, but it's still not allowing me the freedom to do my business and have margin in my life, to do my business and to allow me to have the freedom and the flexibility to work out physically and take things to the next level in my health and fitness, like I see that you're doing. So this person sent me this very lengthy email, and I hit the reply button, and I probably spent about 15 minutes starting to type and all these different things. And then I got to thinking, it's like, you know what? I need to record an episode of Podcast Answer Man. It's Thursday and it's 4:00 in the afternoon, and here I am going to write, for 45 minutes in an email. Why don't I actually share my response with the community, not necessarily giving any indication of who I'm communicating to, and share these thoughts that I was going to communicate via email in a podcast? Because here's the thing. I've experienced this in the past, and I know that many of you who are listening to this, you are at a place, many of you are at a place where you might be doing all the work yourself. You're not making enough money to hire people. You feel like everything that you're doing is absolutely important. Nobody else can do it, or if they could do it, you can't afford to pay them to do it. And you can't see yourself stopping because you've invested so much time and energy, and you're afraid that maybe if I stop doing any of these things, then I will have stopped right before it would have caught on, and all of those other emotions and stuff like that. But here's the thing. If you're at a place in your life where your business pursuits, your professional pursuits are keeping you from achieving success in other areas of life, that can lead to some pretty devastating things. And I think that this person is aware of that. Obviously, this person has emailed me and communicated that to me even directly. And by the way, this person actually mentioned the most recent episode of the Startup podcast from Alex Bloomberg. And he had shared in this past week's episode of Startup a very real scenario of how his new employees are experiencing burnout, and they just simply are working around the clock, not sleeping, and it's having all kinds of emotional and physical ramifications on a negative level in their lives. And so this person who sent me this email is identifying that I feel like that. I laughed when I listened because that's me. So here's the deal. What was I going to share with this person? And the first thing is I appreciate that this person felt open to sharing this this with me, and I'm quite honored to be somebody that they could have just at least let all of those real feelings, those real emotions out. And in fact, the person says, I feel like I can't believe I did this. I don't ever do this. But it actually felt great just to write all of this down, just to actually get these words out, because I didn't know who else I could ever share this with. It's important for people to have the ability to share those words. And so I'm thankful that this person shared them with me. I can't, handle all kinds of emails like this all the time. But this is one of those cases where you do for some what you wish you could do for many. This has always been a motto of mine ever since I heard Andy Stanley talk about this on his podcast. Here's what I want to say is I know that this person did not email me expecting me to reply with all the answers to the problems mentioned in the email. So I know that there's no expectation that I have all the answers or any answers. I think this person was just looking to kind of explain where they are in the process and why they're not able, in their mind, to kind of make progress in the area of their own health and fitness and making that a priority in their life. But what I do have is some encouragement. And number one, being that you're not alone if you're feeling this way. And number two, there are some things that I think I could share from my own experience that could be an encouragement, a source of inspiration that might open up some opportunities to either, I don't know if it's going to help see it from a different perspective, or if it's going to lead down the road of maybe finding some breakthroughs or whatever the case may be. And what I decided to do is I wanted to start off by sharing a story of how I started my business. Now, here I was in 2008, January 2008, just started my business and had no idea how to run a business, anything at all. But I knew that this is what I was called to do, to help people take their message, their business, and their life to the next level through the content that I create. It was very clear to me. This is what I'm supposed to do with my life. So that's what I started to do. And, I had all kinds of thoughts and ideas about different ways that I would generate income. And I'll never forget, I thought for sure that a good portion, at least a third of my income would be coming in, if not half of my income, would be coming in from advertising. That I would be creating content and I would be making money from advertising. And by the way, I had some opportunities that looked promising, but yet some of them seemed too good to be true. And I ended up, after months of negotiation, finally declining an offer with a contract with a specific network, which was a good thing because 3 months later, Podango actually completely shut down and went bankrupt. So I'm very thankful that I had the foresight to turn that down and look in different areas for where I might pursue income. But anyway, once I found that, this maybe advertising deal, that probably isn't going to be the way unless I'm willing to cancel all of my shows and only do one or only do two. Actually, only do one is really what the option would have had to been to really make things happen in a big way back then. And I wasn't willing to do that. I had multiple different varied interests, and I wanted to have multiple podcasts, and I had different audiences for each, and I enjoyed and loved what I was accomplishing in each of those things. So I did not want to let go of any of my babies, okay? I'd invested too much in those things. So I started to look for other opportunities. Obviously, I knew I wanted to help use my experience with podcasting to help other people launch their podcast, and I had launched Podcast Answer Man the year before that, or 2 years before that. And so I knew that I already had some, a little bit of momentum going into the whole getting my word out about being the go-to person or a go-to person for podcasting. So that was working out. But even still, I didn't know how much to charge people. And I was, charging way too little, which in my mind, I thought that, man, this is a huge bargain. And by the way, pricing is one of the things that was mentioned in this email, and the mention that I got to the place where I'm not even charging what I know I'm worth. And even at this ridiculously low price, I'm still not making the sales that I need. And one of the things there that I learned back when people would ask me, "Hey, Cliff, I need to know how much it is to work with you. I'm looking to start a podcast and stuff like that." And when I told them my rates were $50 an hour, I was not landing very many jobs. In fact, there were several people who told me that, Cliff, you're probably not getting any work because people don't think you take yourself seriously. They hear that you're a consultant that can help somebody solve this huge, conundrum of how do I put all this stuff together and make it all work and create a show, and you're only charging $50 an hour. And so what I found, and I did not realize this until much later, but what I found is that people, there's some sense of pricing where people, when you charge more, people feel like it's more valuable. People take things more seriously when they pay more. They take action more. The other thing is that they also respect and feel that you believe that you're more valuable. And another thing that I found back then is that people did not want to encourage me. There's a lot of people that wanted to hire me, that were considering hiring me, I should say, that knew that I had left my career in insurance. They knew that I have a family of 5, that my wife is a stay-at-home mom. They knew that I had 3 young kids and that we're a single income family. And I had pretty much left that income to pursue this new business where I'm not making much income. And when they hear my rates are only, $50 an hour, they did the math. They're far enough along in their understanding of how business runs to know that, man, even if I booked myself 60 hours a week at $50 an hour, nobody does that. Nobody books themselves as a consultant that many hours per week. You don't even book yourself 30 hours. So they knew that, hiring me at $50 an hour was only going to encourage me. And they knew that at $50 an hour that I really wasn't going to generate enough income in my business to support my family. And there are some people I know did not hire me because my prices were too low for various different reasons. And certainly a big, huge reason is because I didn't see myself as being any more valuable than $50. So one thing that I learned in my own experience is raising my prices and charging what it's worth. It certainly did some pretty big things for me over time. The more I raised my rates, the more the higher percentage of closing of getting people to hire me versus the number of people who were asking. So I had a higher client or pickup rate, if you will, or closing the sale, if you will, a higher percentage of closing the sale on hiring me. Well, anyway, there was a period of time where things were just getting so out of control as far as financially. Things were really tough for us in 2008. And one of the things that I decided is that if I don't make enough money here, I'm going to go out and get a part-time job delivering pizza. And what happened was it had gotten so bad that finally one day I literally remember the day that I don't remember the date, but I do remember that day in my mind. I grabbed my keys and I was ready to head for the car, and I was going to go to all the local pizza places within 10 or 15 miles of my house, and I was going to put an application to become a pizza delivery guy for any one of those stores that would hire me. Now, let's be realistic here. I even thought to myself, how much money I'm going to put in about 20 hours a week is what I'll make myself available, maybe 25. And between those, 25 or, 50, 20 to 25. So let's just say we did 25 hours, and let's just say they paid, let's say, $8 an hour. So we're talking, that's $200. Wait a second. Don't do math in a live podcast, Cliff Ravenscraft. Hold on one second. I'm going to do some math here. All right, so it's 106. So let's just say $20 or 20 hours a week, whatever. It comes out to about $700 a month gross. And then, once it's all done, I might bring home somewhere between, $400, $500 after taxes, something like that. And my thinking was like, okay, that's going to be 25 hours a week. But at least I'll have some money at the end of the month, to put on some food on the table. And literally it was that bad. Food on the table was what we were going for. And so what happened was, right as I picked up the keys and I'm heading up the stairs, my cell phone rings. And all of a sudden it's this guy who says, Cliff, hi, my name is so-and-so. I found you as a result of a Google search, and I'm thinking about buying, I'm actually getting ready to set up a studio for some podcasting. I just left my career as a radio host, and I wanted to start out on my own. I have a small budget, but wanted to know if you could help me find the right equipment. I understand that you also sell equipment. And so the first question I asked, I said, can you tell me what you have in mind when you say you have a small budget? And I think it was something ridiculous, like I only have $20,000 to spend. And I'm thinking $20,000, that's a small budget. So I said, I'm pretty sure we can work with that. I ended up selling him pretty much exactly what I had in my studio. I walked him through piece by piece, and he seemed to know exactly what I was talking about. And then I told him, I said, that's going to be about, everything total is going to be about $2,000. And he's like, okay, go ahead and order it. Are you sure that's it? And I'm like, yeah, that's it. And so I ended up doing that. And I don't know how much time I spent. If in my mind, it was like 30 minutes on the phone or something like that. It might have been a little shorter, might have been a little longer. But here's the deal. I made about $350 in profit on that sale. And I just made almost what I would make in a month of delivering pizzas. I had made in a very short period of time on the phone. One phone call, one afternoon. And so I put my keys back on the place where I kept my keys. And then I said to myself, I am not going to go out and get a job delivering pizza. I'm going to devote 20 to 25 hours per week doing anything and everything solely focused on making what just happened on the telephone happen again. And so that's when I decided to go full bore on equipment sales. Now, back at the time, I was advertising in social media that, hey guys, if you have any questions about podcast equipment, I give a free 30-minute phone consultation. Now, what I knew from doing this is that if people were to spend 30 minutes on the phone with me and we were to discover what their needs and desires for podcast equipment were, that if they had the budget to order and place that order, that they would go ahead and order it through me versus getting it somewhere else. And not to mention the fact that I would also not just get them the right gear, but I would get them exactly the right cables, and I would even send them a diagram on how it's all hooked up. I mean, it's a no-brainer solution. And as a result of that, I was selling a lot of equipment, and everything was custom for every client. It was all amazing, super win for them. And I got to the place where my business was generating month after month, consistently somewhere between $4,000 to $6,000 per month in business net profit. Now that's after, that's profit on the equipment that was sold. $4,000 to $6,000 in business, net profit for the business on that. So my business income was way up from where it used to be, and this was great. But the reality is that still, things are still tight as far as financially. I had done all of the budget and the projections, and in the worst case scenario, meaning that things are not going as nearly as good as I hope. What do I need at least to get by on? And I found that I needed at least $10,000 per month business income. That would help me pay for all of the expenses, health insurance, all the overhead, paying CPA and all these other things that I paid for in the business. And it would allow me to actually pay myself a paycheck, which would be nice, which is a very meager paycheck, but at least it's a paycheck nonetheless. $10,000 was the minimum I needed, but I was only bringing in about $4,000 to $6,000 per month. Now, I was still bringing in about $1,000, sometimes $2,000 in consulting income. So I was still doing a little bit of that, but a majority of my income was coming in from equipment sales. Then I met Dan Miller. All of a sudden, it's this whole thing where the right person takes notice of what you're doing. Now, Dan Miller is a career coach. He literally he wrote the book on finding the work that you love, right? So it's called 48 Days to the Work You Love. Wonderful book. And it was a huge inspiration to me, this book was, in changing my mindset and perspective on work. Anyway, I met Dan Miller, and as a result of doing some work with him, he began to mention me to his large community of people. And we're talking about his community of, there are millions and millions of people who know who Dan Miller is. And he has literally tens of thousands, if not actually probably hundreds of thousands of people who follow what he does online. And I know exactly how many people that listen to his podcast. And then his own personal network of friends and clients and stuff like that. He started to refer people to me left and right. Within 2 weeks of meeting Dan Miller and starting to work with him as a client, he began to refer so many people to me that within 2 weeks, I had 12 brand new clients. And these were one-on-one coaching and consulting clients who wanted me to help them from scratch start a podcast. 12 new clients. And it was so much that I had a hard time remembering everybody's name from call to call. And the problem was that, there was about 5 or 6 people that were on a waiting list for 2 to 3 weeks before I could actually fit them into my schedule. And I shared this in a podcast that I do called Pursuing a Balanced Life. It's my daily, it's not daily, but it's my audio journal podcast. You can go check it out at pursuingabalancedlife.com. Anyway, I shared what was going on. I was like, guys, I've got all this stuff. Things are going great. I have more work than I can deal with, but I'm still having a hard time, figuring out how to fit all this in. I have no margin in my life. I can't say no to this equipment work, and I can't put all of these people on my schedule because I have to take time to draw these diagrams, process, do all these equipment proposals and send them things and send them invoices. And back then I was even doing manual invoices. It was crazy. Anyway, one of my listeners sent me some feedback. I think his name is David Doucette. He said, "Hey Cliff, I'm going to share 3 words that'll change your life." And I'm like, "What's that?" And he says, you got to hear me out. He says, "Stop selling equipment." And I'm like, "What?" He's like, "Seriously, stop selling equipment." And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. Consistently, we're talking without fail, a minimum of $4,000 a month. A minimum of $4,000 a month. And on a good month, I'm making somewhere up to around $6,000 a month in business net profit income. Over when it comes to the difference between what my clients pay me and what I pay my supplier, a profit of $4,000 to $6,000. How can you say stop selling equipment? You got to be kidding. And then he says, do the math. How many hours are you spending each week? And I had actually shared that in the podcast. And then all of a sudden, take that by your 4,000 to 6,000 and kind of just do the math. He goes, now if I heard your podcast explanation correctly, what it turns out to me is I can see that you're making about somewhere between $12 to $15 an hour. And you're telling us in the podcast that you're turning down clients, and I think my rate at that time was $150 per hour, or it might have been $100 per hour. It doesn't matter. It's at least $100 an hour at that time. And the whole situation, I'm turning down $100, or I'm not turning down, but I'm putting off for 2 to 3 weeks. I'm putting off people who want to pay me right now for my services $100 or more per hour. And I can't do that right now because I'm actively pursuing work that's generating $12 to $15 an hour. And I'm like, but yeah, I get that. But the thing is that 12 to 15, it's consistent. What if these clients, it's great that I have these clients now, but are they going to continue to come? And I felt like they would. And it made a lot of sense. And I made a radical decision. I stopped selling all equipment sales. I made a point that says, you know what? Nobody can convince me to do anything outside of what I've decided here. And I will not sell any equipment for the next 2 months. I shut it off for 2 months just to see how things worked out. And as a result of doing that, my income tripled as a result of that, because I only focused on what was producing the most income per hour spent doing the work. And all of a sudden I cut off all this other work, and it freed up and gave me a lot of margin. So I was booking an entire week of 20 hours a week, doing 100, or I can't remember, 150. Eventually my rates got up to $300 per hour. And I was still taking on so many calls that I had to end up, well, we'll get to that. I don't want to jump too far ahead. But the reality is I gave up $4,000 to $6,000 a month of regular consistent income. I shut down that entire portion of my business. And then all of a sudden my overall income increased by 3 times because I had made that decision. And then all of a sudden, eventually 2 months later, I decided, you know what? I will continue to sell equipment. And that's why if you go to podcastanswerman.com/equipment right now, you will see that I have an equipment package, one full equipment package, and that is it. And right below it, you'll see that there is a Heil microphone package. And the only reason that package exists is for people who want 2 microphones with their full package. All right? That's all I sell. If you email me and say, Cliff, I'd like to get your equipment package, but I'd like to get it without the headphones, I already have headphones. And I would just very kindly and very politely tell you that I don't make that option available, but there are links to all the individual pieces of gear there on the site if you want to order it individually. I only sell the package. And the reason why is because I actually have set it up to where my assistant, Andrea, processes all of that for me. She takes care of that from the beginning of the sale all the way to the end of the sale. She handles every single piece of it, but I set up the entire process and I oversee it and make sure it all happens and stuff like that. But Andrea's been doing that for me for years. So now, today, I still make several $1,000s worth a month in net profit for the business income side of things. I still make several $1,000s a month in equipment sales, but I don't have to work on it at all. I've hired somebody else who handles that. Now, do I pay Andrea to do all the work on that? Yeah, but let me just say this, I know that she does not spend an hour on that, and my virtual assistant Andrea, who lives in Missouri, I'm not going to tell you exactly how much I pay her, but let's put it this way, it's more than $18 an hour and it's less than $35 an hour. And what I can tell you is that she never really spends more than maybe 15-20 minutes per equipment order. And so you can see that I actually, it made sense for me to hire her to help a process that is proven to be profitable, even with her handling all of the work. So that's one thing that I learned. And the other thing that I learned is that for 2 months, I needed to just shut it down so that I could focus on an area of my business that was producing. And that's another thing that I had to do. So I share that. And then the other thing that I would tell you is that, as I said, I finally got to the place where I was, booking my consulting/coaching schedule pretty consistently. And even then what happened was I got to the place where, I'm working around the clock. It seems like, with all of these calls and stuff like that. And I'm teaching the same things over and over again. And, while I loved working with all the individuals, it kind of got a little bit overwhelming one day when I taught 4 different clients. I had 4 2-hour consulting calls, 2 in the morning and 2 in the afternoon. And all 4 of those clients were all taught in one day by me how to use Adobe Audition. I literally basically walked the first client from installing the software and how to use it over a 2-hour period of time. And then by the end of the 2 hours, they knew what they needed to know, and they were off to, go start recording, editing, and producing content with their Adobe Audition. And then 30 minutes later, I'd get on the next call and I did the same thing. And then I'd go to lunch And I came back after lunch and I did the same thing from beginning to end. And I'm like, okay, I love the people, but this is getting boring, teaching the same thing over and over and over and over again. And so that's what convinced me that I should probably maybe do a webinar where I can teach people live and I can give them the recording and I can turn the recording into a digital product. And that's exactly what I did. And so what I did is I sent out an email to my mailing list, which only had just over 200 people at the time. But it was 200 people who signed up knowing that the only time I was going to email them was when I had a new product or service to offer. So there was a community of people on my mailing list that were eager to buy something new from me. So I sent out this email to my mailing list and said, listen, guys, this is what I'm going to do. I am going to create a series of 7 webinars where I'm going to teach the things that people hire me to teach the most. I did Adobe Audition 101. I did Audacity 101, GarageBand 101, and all of these other various different tutorials. And basically, I said you can pay $100 per tutorial or per webinar, or you could pay $595 and get all 7 of them. And I had made $16,000 within, I think, like 10 days of sending that email out. And then all of a sudden, I'm like, oh my gosh, now I got to really create all these webinars, which was no problem. I had been used to teaching and stuff like that. But all of a sudden, I realized for the first time the power of group coaching, group teaching, and also creating digital products. Because what happened was, once I did the webinars and turned them into recordings, high quality HD video recordings, super audio, very well thought out and prepared for instruction, I found that, man, this is something that I could put online and have people buy, night or day. And if you want, you can go to podcastanswerman.com/products, and you'll see that many of those tutorials are available for individual purchase still today. Many of them have been updated, and they're still selling. And today, I still make thousands of dollars per month from the sale of those digital training tutorials. Well, it got to the place where I'm getting paid $300 per hour for one-on-one coaching and consulting, and I'm also trying to create all these digital products and tutorials. And stuff like this. And I realized that, man, it's hard to turn down $300 per hour, but I realized that if I spent more time creating digital products and doing some other things, that it would probably be more beneficial in the long run. So I was actually starting to think, well, maybe if I just increase my rates. And so I went to my advisory board, just an informal group of business advisors and mentors that I'm connected with. And I put them all into a group forum, and we discussed, what my rate should go up to. And the decision was between one of two options. I could go to $2,500 per hour for consulting, or I could stop doing one-on-one consulting altogether. And I ended up actually deciding to stop doing one-on-one coaching and consulting altogether. And it's been about 2.5 or maybe even 3 years now since I've done one-on-one coaching and consulting. I've probably in the last, since then, in total, I've probably made an exception for 3 or 4 people. And it's only because I had lots of extra time, which, is not necessarily the case these days. But yeah, so I ended up, and this thing that was the majority of my income, once again, I'm completely shutting down. But I did it so that I could focus on my digital products and keeping those up to date and everything. And also because I had Podcasting A to Z that started back in March of 2011. And I saw that this was consistently selling out every single time I did a session. And it was selling out because a lot of people said, Cliff, I want to hire you one-on-one. And I said, well, I'm not available for one-on-one, but let me tell you about my course. And then they said, well, that's a no-brainer. Sign me up for that course. I can't wait. And so that's what happened. So I share all of that to say that, man, I can tell you there have been so many times when I was overwhelmed and burned out from doing so much. And every single time it came down to how did I get through that season of life? And by the way, There are some times that I believe we get into the that season of life where we're working, burning the midnight oil, burning the candle at both ends of the stick. I think there are some times when that's needed, when that's necessary. But I really have come to understand that it's not good for us to sustain that for a very long period of time. That I can tell you from personal experience, it can lead to very serious physical conditions. It can lead to emotional conditions. It can lead you to depression and just a lot of frustration overall. But for me, over the years, I've been to the hospital 2 different times and almost died once and thought I was dying the second time. If you want, you can go to gspn.tv/hospital, and there's blog posts about all of that experience. I won't go into it here, but the reality is you can't be a workaholic like I have been all of these years. You can't try to do it all on your own, and you can't always be, can't go for years. You can't go for years of trying to build something and still doing every single thing all by yourself and having no personal time for yourself. And in fact, it reminds me of the story of putting the big rocks in first. And I think it's a Stephen Covey illustration. And I've heard so many other people tell this, but there's this whole jar and somebody says, it's all about putting the right things in first, the big things in first, the things that are the most important, the things that are the most essential. And if you haven't seen this, just see if you can Google or go on YouTube and do a search for the big things first in the jar. Let me see if I can find a link to it. Okay, so I just went to youtube.com and I put big things first jar in the search box. And there's all kinds of people showing the illustration. You can see there's one that's called 7 Big Rocks, Stephen Covey, Jar of Life, Rocks in a Jar, Franklin Covey's The 7 Habits video preview. So basically, just go and just put big rocks in first or whatever, big things first jar. Whatever you just go, if you've never seen that illustration before, go there and do that. And if there's anything that I've learned from all of this experience, is even if we remove faith from the whole element, the one thing that I've come to realize in my life and in my business is that if I don't protect my asset, and those of you who are on my mailing list, you know that I recently sent out an email about that. If I don't protect me and my health and my overall well-being, then my business isn't going to last. If I'm not taking good care of myself, and I'm stressed and I'm emotionally strained, if I'm physically deflated and exhausted, this presents itself in my physical appearance. I may not realize it, but other people see it. I know that they do. And people won't want to do business. And I'm surprised at how many people over the years have wanted to do business with me, knowing that I've let my business run my life instead of me running my business. And I guess the big rock first for me, and certainly this has been the case now since November 14th of last year, 2014, I have decided that my biggest rocks that need to go in first is my physical fitness and health. Exercising 6 days a week, every week for the rest of my life. That comes before recording an episode of Podcast Answer Man. It comes before answering any single question for a Podcasting A to Z student. It comes before anything else in my business. It comes before anything else even in my own family life. Now, are there some times where there's an emergency or an exception to that? Sure. But, barring no emergency, the first thing that goes first is my physical fitness. I've got to work out. I've decided that, and not only do I have to, I want to. And I realized that I have to eat healthy and I have to have margin in my life. I have to allow myself to have time throughout the day where I can breathe. I want to get to the place. Now, again, I said there are seasons in life when you're burning the candle at both ends of the stick. But there should be seasons in your life where you're working a normal work week. And you also occasionally have the time for a quick 20 or 30 minute nap in the middle of the day. If you're not at a place like that, and again, barring the seasons of busyness that are required at times, but if you're not over the past 12 months, if you don't have enough margin in your life to kind of just take a nap in the middle of a work day or go out for a walk, and you certainly are you're staying up working so late at night that you can't get up early in the morning, and where you can at least get at least 6 hours of sleep. I'm at the place now where I know that I want 8 hours of sleep every night, and I've been doing that. I've been going. My mom, the kids' mom, Stephanie, my wife, and my kids have been calling me an old man because I've been going to bed at 8:30 at night because I want to have my head in the bed by 9 o'clock, and so that I'm either asleep by 9:30, 10 o'clock at the latest, because I wake up at 5 a.m. every morning, and I want 8 hours of sleep. And when I wake up in the morning, I don't immediately jump right into answering emails and stuff like that. I've decided, you know what? I'm going to wake up in the morning. All that stuff can wait. I'm going to read for a little bit. For a little bit means an hour. And then, by 6 o'clock, I'm ready to have breakfast, and I fix myself breakfast. I spend a whole half an hour in quiet or listening to a podcast while I'm fixing and eating breakfast. And then I get ready to head downstairs, and by 7:30, I'm in the workout room, sometimes as early as 7 o'clock in the morning. And I spend a minimum of 45 minutes as my requirement to my commitment to myself. But I've been working out for 60 minutes to 90 minutes every single day for the last couple weeks now. And those are my rocks that come first. And then finally, at 9 o'clock in the morning, I'm ready to walk into my office and say, hey, okay, what does this business have for me today? Or what am I doing in my business today? And it really has helped to have a couple of these books that I've mentioned. Essentialism is a book that really helps you understand that you really have to ask yourself, what's my greatest area of contribution to this world? And what is the greatest contribution that I can do in my business to produce the best results? And yes, it makes sense to ask that question financially. What am I doing in my business that is not producing the results that I need and that are in line with my goals? And by the way, equipment sales, gosh, it's producing results, right? But it's not producing the results that I needed to meet my goals, because the only way I could have made more money the way that I was doing equipment sales at that time was to work more hours. And I didn't have more hours to give. I was already working around the clock, 7 days a week sometimes. So, the book Essentialism really helps say, what is the most important thing, and how do we define what is essential, and what are some methods and some thoughts about how to cut back, and how to uncommit, and how to say no, and all of these other things. So Essentialism by Greg McKeown is a great book in this area. Another book was referred to me by my friend Michael Stelzner, and it is this book called Necessary Endings by Dr. Henry Cloud. And this book talks about the fact that there are some things that we've been doing for a long time, and sometimes it's just time to say goodbye to something. And I happen to, now I'm thinking about this person that sent me this email, and I'm not suggesting that this person needs to abandon their business efforts or altogether and start something new, something fresh. I'm saying that there are some things, and who knows, maybe it is for this person. I don't know. I don't have the answers for any one individual, but I know for me, there are always things that I need to look at and say, what am I doing that just needs to end, so that new things in my life can begin. And it was about a year ago that I came to you guys and told you I'm actually leaving. I'm ending my contract with New Media Expo. I told them and gave them notice that I need to step down from being the director of podcasting for New Media Expo. And I did that last year. I told you last year that I was shutting down the podcast mastermind after 2 years. And I shut that down so that I could say yes to new and important goals in my life. This year, I shut down even more things, and not necessarily, well, actually just recently, I shut down Live Show Thursday so that I could actually, keep up with the commitments that I have to my A to Z students, which is a big rock in my business, and also so that I could work out in the morning, which is the biggest rock of them all. And so, yeah, I realize that I'm saying "and so" a lot. But anyway, it's Necessary Endings by Dr. Henry Cloud. And, that's the question. What are we putting first? And here's the one other thing that I want to say. And what really prompted this conversation with my friend that emailed me was the fact that this person was really inspired by my workout posts. That this person had seen that, man, every single day, consistently, without fail, well, except for Sunday, because Sunday's my one day off. I do this 6 days a week every week for the rest of my life, not 7 days a week. But every day, I'm there consistently on schedule. There's a new picture of a selfie of me in the workout room or various different places at the gym, playing racquetball, whatever. Every single day, there are these reminders that Cliff is living up to his health and fitness goals and routine. And that I find inspiring. And I really want to try to get back at that. That's what this friend has said. And then the email was, this is why that's not happening for me right now. And I would say to this person and anyone that's listening, and by the way, I'm saying this to Cliff Ravenscraft as well, that putting health and fitness first, putting your intentional workouts, taking care of your body physically, getting a good solid 6 to 8 hours of sleep a night. I would recommend as close as to 8 as possible, maybe 9 if you can squeeze it in. But anyway, working out 6 days a week for me is what it is. For you, it might just be getting it in three days a week, and Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And I would encourage you to make it a weekday so that it actually is a priority above your business, that you have to actually do something crazy to your schedule, whether it's get up early, which would mean that you need to go to bed earlier, which means that you need to quit working earlier. I mean, put your health before your business. And when you put your health before your business, I can tell you from experience, you feel better. You have more clarity. You have more peace, less stress. I feel less stressed. I feel more peace. I actually have come to the place where, you know what? I look forward to working out because I know what it's doing to my overall physical well-being. Emotionally, I feel better. I'm so much happier in life. And you know what? I still have the same stresses in my business, but they don't stress me out. There are stresses in my business, but they don't stress me out. I still, at the end of the day, I have decided when my end time is, and by golly, when it's that time, I'm done working. And I go and I have dinner with my family. I hang out with them, and then after that, it's 8:30. It's like, dude, I'm going to bed. Bye, old man. Good night, old man. That's what my kids say. They just won't let it go. But you know what? This is the life that I have designed for myself. And, here's the deal. If you're in a season of your business that requires that you burn the candle at both ends and stuff like that, still try to find some time to make the minimum. What is it that, can you start out with 15 minutes, 3 days a week? Can you start there? Can you start with 20 minutes? Can you up it? Do something. Start where you are and just do something to take that to the next level. And the only reason I would suggest that you do these things is because, if you're thinking, I'd really That's my little reminder that I need to head out for dinner. It's 5:00, and I'm going to. But anyway, if you have this, if you have this desire that says, Cliff, I want to get back into a good routine of working out. I want to get into the place where I'm taking care of myself physically. If you are in that place and that's the thought, then I recommend that you start doing it. Make that your biggest rock, bigger than your business. Because here's the thing. I don't know whether or not your business will be here in 5 to 10 years from now or 20 years from now. But I can tell you that if we're working ourselves, stressing ourselves out, and we're never taking care of ourselves physically or emotionally, not getting enough sleep and all that stuff, I do believe there's a very good chance that while our business may have still been going great and super successful at some point, the reality is that we might not be able to run it because we're in a hospital bed or 6 feet underground. So that's my thought is make your personal goals, your physical fitness goals, put yourself before your clients. Yes, I said it. Put yourself before your clients and take care of yourself and do it for your clients. All right? They'll thank you for it in the long run when you're still there in 10 or 15 years from now, serving their needs, making things happen for them. And then the other thing is I don't know whether or not you read Necessary Endings or the book Essentialism, but I certainly encourage anybody out there that is working around the clock and stressful, and it's not just a season for you, and you know it's not just a season, it's been more than a year, then I would highly recommend that you start evaluating, what do I need to cut away? What needs to end? What needs to be taken out of my life so I can pursue something different that is more effective, that helps me meet the goals that I have for my business and for my finances, so that I can actually have the margin in my life that I desire and I need to be the best contribution to the world around me. Guys, that's this week's episode of Podcast Answer Man. One last thing I will share with you. I've been working out successfully 6 days a week, every week since November 14th, 2014, with the exception of 3 days when I got back from my Disney trip. I was sick with bronchitis, but that was doctor's orders to stay off. But I've been working out every single morning, and I will tell you, I've lost inches around my waist. I've lost 1.5 inches around my neck. My belly is about 2 inches thinner. My chest is thinner, and I've lost 21 pounds. I stopped drinking Diet Coke. I don't drink anything with artificial sweetener whatsoever. I've started eating very healthy, natural, clean foods, and I am loving my life more, living my life fully each and every day. And I love my physical fitness and routine and all of those things that I'm doing more than I love my business. And that is a huge success in taking my life to the next level. Now, my friends, I have to get out of here. I'm heading out to dinner with my family, and I encourage you to take whatever you're doing, whatever you need to do in your life, and take it to the next level.
Podcast Answer Man.